Billam-Smith
Yes.
and Richard Riakporhe, which has the potential of being a very explosive fight.
Yeah.
They've done this dance before. I think both of them are different fighters than when they fought first time round.
Yeah, nearly 5 years ago now.
Yeah, well, Chris Billam-Smith is now a world champion. And whilst I wasn't hugely impressed with his first defence against Masterneck, he went in and did a job against Lawrence. Lawrence Okoli's obviously gone up to Bridgerweight now and won his world title.
Yeah.
And did it in impressive style in Poland, didn't he?
Yeah.
And Richard Riakporhe has gone through the gears of I was speaking to a mentor of his when he fought Glowacki in Manchester, and he went in and knocked him out in 4 rounds, didn't he? He said the big thing with Richard is his mindset is now in place.
Yes.
He now has got a lot of confidence in himself, and he's stepping in. He's got the power to do the damage, and he believes in himself. So now what you've got is 2 fighters that genuinely both believe they can win this fight. Both of them different and better than the first time round they thought. What's your
Listen,
view?
I totally agree with everything you said there, as in they are both much better fighters. You know, Chris Billam-Smith, he's had 10 fights since that fight nearly 5 years ago. He's had 10 fights, 10 wins, picked up the WBO. Richard Riakporhe's had 7 fights. He's been impressive. And like you say, he's found that self-belief. And that was the important thing, because he's always had the attributes, he's always had the technical ability, but not the self-belief. And that makes him a different fighter. But what we've got with Chris Billam-Smith is that he's become world champion, and that's elevated him to another level. And that kid's will to win is something insane.
Undoubted.
So we've got a different fight here. I don't know if we get a different outcome, but we've got a different fight because you've got 2 guys that are pretty much at the top of their game.
It's interesting if he's not spending his time with Madonna sitting on his lap.
This may be a problem.
Oh, blimey, that's a fright, isn't it? You want to get in a ring and punch someone rather than have that sat on your lap, wouldn't you? But you look at this fight and you look at the various component parts of it. I mean, obviously, we've seen Chris, and I think most people thought, and I know Richard Riakporhe did because we were at that fight in May of last year at the Vitality, where Riakporhe was prowling around the ring, waiting to call out Okoli.
Absolutely.
Right? And they'd had a dust up in a cinema, hadn't they? It was all staged and planned.
It was all set, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so Chris came along and spoilt the party.
Yeah.
Lawrence has gone off and done his own thing and gone up a different weight class and suggested that it was a challenge for him to maintain that weight, and hence the performances. And we'll see if he does go on to be more significant in terms of...
He looked great against Rosansky, to be fair. He did look much better at that weight.
So I understand.
Yeah.
So I understand.
Incredible.
And obviously dispatched him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty bloody quickly.
Yeah, because he had the confidence in himself.
And the technical ability, which we know Lawrence has got. It's just whether he utilises it or not.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got Chris Billam-Smith against Riakporhe. We've got this upsetting of the apple cart. You've got Riakporhe preparing for Okoli. You've got Billam-Smith winning the world title, defending against Masterneck, which I went to and I wasn't hugely impressed.
Well, he had to ask himself a lot of questions in that fight.
He did the job.
Yeah, he did. He showed character.
Yeah, he showed. Well, one thing he's got is character.
Yeah,
and you know he's got fortitude and resilience, and both of them are very likable fellas. And both of them, my leaning is towards Riakporhe. He's a Crystal Palace fan. He comes into Glad all over. He's fighting at Sellers Park. Do you think the fact that Billam-Smith is fighting away from his home crowds and fighting away from... He fought at the Vitality, which was a memorable night for him. He fought at the Conference Centre in Bournemouth.
Yes.
And was with very partisan crowds.
Yeah. We've done the Vitality a couple of times now, hasn't he?
So he's now fighting away from that environment.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to help or hinder him?
It's a great question, Simon, because against Lawrence Okoli, let's use that as an example there, that crowd played a huge part in pulling him through that fight, really. I think that was, yes, he showed character, and yes, he showed a lot of enthusiasm in the fight, but there were times there when it was going away from him. He got hurt a couple of times, as we saw in the last fight with Riakporhe. Riakporhe had Chris Billam-Smith down. So stylistically, he's got that punch power, and he will take the fight to Billam-Smith. We know what Smith's going to do. The crowd could play a huge part in this, on winning and losing this fight. So home advantage could be crucial for Richard Riakporhe here, because I think that Billam-Smith, fair play to him. I love that he's stepping up and going into the other guy's backyard and putting it on the line, knowing how hard that last fight was. Great. That tells you the character of the guy. But it's a tough night for Chris Billam-Smith. It really is. I favoured Richard Riakporhe as well, because like I said, they've both gone on their great careers and they've developed and built themselves into great fighters. But I just think that the slight freshness is with Richard Riakporhe, and that added confidence that he's got now will just tip him over the edge. And so he starts to a very slight favourite for me. But you can't ever go against Billam-Smith because he's got the character to pull it around.
Do you think there's a psychological battle to be had here, given the fact that they're in the pros, not in the amateurs? Often what happens is people fight in the amateurs. Dillian Whyte fought Anthony Joshua, beat him in the amateurs.
Yeah.
Right? And we've seen many fighters like that.
Yeah.
That's happened too. When they get in the pros, it's a different set of rules. But this was in the pros. This defeat that Riakporhe inflicted upon Chris Billam-Smith was in the pros. It was a split decision, right?
Split decision,
right?
yeah.
So it had its yings and yangs in it, didn't it? Do you think there's a psychological baggage that gets carried into this fight for Chris Billam-Smith, and do you think there's a psychological advantage that gets carried in for Richard Riakporhe?
No, I don't think there's a psychological advantage for neither man, and the reason I say that is because Billam-Smith had his moments in that fight where he lost in that split decision. Like, he had to pull himself off the floor, but then he also put Richard under a lot of pressure, and Richard had to ask himself questions in that. It was character building for both of them, the fight. But I think he had enough success in that fight to go, now I'm the champion. I'm at that level, and that will have elevated him to another level. And he go, now Richard's got to come and take my title. So I don't think it affects him, but psychologically, Richard will be going, listen, I've done it before, and I've had him down this time. I want to keep him there.
Do you smell a Wardley Clark sort of fight?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can guarantee it. Yeah. It's just the styles of the guys with what's on the line.
Yeah.
You know, from both guys, they will fight and leave it all in the ring. That is a fact. I think we've got a fight of the year contender here.
Do you?
Definitely.
Do you? So you're going down the same route as me, which is Riakporhe.
Yeah, I'm leaning towards Riakporhe.
Are you going on a points basis, or are you going on a conclusive outcome, which is a stoppage?
I'm going on a close barnstormer points decision for Richard Riakporhe. I think we get a similar sort of fight to the first one, but with two much improved fighters.
I got a feeling,
and someone will have to get off the floor.
My tips have been pretty poor recently. So anyone listening to this will go, shut up. You know, we talk.
How have I been doing, by the way?
When I was in America, I tipped all 5 fights, and I was right on all 5. But of course, I didn't do it on air, so I don't have any proof for that. But I picked all 5 fights.
I picked 4.
Did you?
Right, yeah, because we picked him on the show, didn't we? The only one we got wrong was Hutchinson, who credit where credit's due.
So you must be right then, because I was talking to someone else. We went with Craig Richards, didn't we?
Yeah, we went with Craig Richards.
I mean,
so we went 4-1, yeah.